Branded Yubel. This is my deck profile for my new Branded Yubel deck. If you have not seen this deck in action, then be sure to click the card above to go check that out. But let's get straight into it. So this deck obviously combines the new Yubel cards with the Branded engine into one very spicy, very powerful deck that actually has a really good synergy and works very well together. So let's get straight into it. Starting off, we have our Yubel engine. We of course run one copy of Yubel, the Ultimate Nightmare, one copy of Terror Incarnate, and two copies of the original Yubel. You only need two copies of the original. We don't need three, and we certainly don't need two of the other versions because they're just too bricky. Like, if you ever see Terror Incarnate or Ultimate Nightmare in your hand, you don't want that. You never want to see those in your hand. So that's why we're going to run one of them. And the main Yubel that we want to see in our hand will of course be our three copies of Spirit of Yubel, who can then go into Yubel, who can go into Terror Incarnate, and go into the Ultimate Nightmare. So three copies of Spirit of Yubel. Obviously Spirit of Yubel also searches for our Nightmare Pain, which is very important. Next we have three copies of Samsara Regenerating Lotus. Again, this is just to summon the Spirit of Yubel. This is very obvious. We need three of these. This is our main starter for the Yubel engine. And then we have two copies of Geistgrinder Golem. Geistgrinder Golem, you gotta have him, right? Like, he's a really good card for the Yubel engine, and he just enables the Yubel OTK. If you get this guy out, you only need three copies of any of the Yubels, or even just like two Ultimate Nightmares, or one Ultimate Nightmare and one other Yubel. And then you'll be good to go with Geistgrinder Golem, and you'll win easily. Next up, we have our Branded engine. For the monsters, we have three copies of Albur, the Jester of Despia, and one copy of the Fallen of Albaz. Fallen of Albaz, we don't really want to see him in our hand. If he is in our hand, he is still useful to us. We can fuse him, and we can summon him to fuse, basically super fuse with our opponent's monsters. And then, of course, Albur, the Jester of Despia, is used to search for our Branded Fusion, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, he's going to be our main monster for the Branded engine, just grabbing Branded Fusion. And then Fallen of Albaz is our main fusion material. Next, of course, we run three copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Brain because you gotta have the Ash Blossom. You absolutely need it these days. And one copy of Dark Beckoning Beast. This is mainly, this supports our Yubel engine, and that will allow us to grab our opening of the Spirit Gates, which is a really good card for Yubel. So that's it for the monsters. It's very simple if you know the Yubel strategy. Well, if you don't, it's Samsara Regenerating Lotus, go into Spirit of Yubel. Spirit of Yubel grabs Nightmare Pain, then you can immediately use Nightmare Pain to destroy Spirit if you want, who will then bring out the original Yubel. Our Regenerating Lotus comes back during the end phase if you have the OG Yubel, and of course that will get us into our Eternal Favorite or Mature Chronicle, which will allow us to then super fuse and wipe out our opponent's entire board. So the main point of the Yubel engine is just to get that ultimate super fusion going, just to stop our opponent from doing anything. As soon as they summon like a bunch of monsters, they're finished with their monsters, we wipe out their entire board with super fusion, and that is just fantastic. And of course Yubel has her own way to OTK, which is great as well. As for the Branded engine, we're going for Branded Fusion. That's the main thing here. Albur is the only monster you want to see, and he will add your Branded Fusion straight to your hand. Now for our spells, like I said, three copies of Branded Fusion. We use this to fuse our Fallen of Albaz with pretty much any monster in our deck to go into our Branded Fusion monsters. We have one copy of 1 for 1. This card is just to summon Samsara Regenerating Lotus, which again just starts off our Yubel combo, allowing us to fully combo off with the Yubel cards. We have three copies of Small World. Basically, Small World is really good in Yubel. If you get any monster in your hand, including the highest forms of Yubel, any monster with 0 attack in your hand, you can Small World to go into your Ash Blossom, who will then allow you to add your Samsara Regenerating Lotus, which is fantastic. Next up, we have three copies of Super Polymerization. This card is absolutely needed in Yubel. As long as you have any Yubel monster on the field, you can Super Fusion, wipe out your opponent's entire board. All of their effect monsters fuse into Yubel das Ewigliebe, which I nearly said the wrong name there. Yeah, Super Fusion just wipes out our entire board, our opponent's entire board, if we have any Yubel monster on the field. Or, you know, any actual Yubel monster, not including Regenerating Lotus, of course. Next up, we have one copy of Mature Chronicle. Mature Chronicle is definitely useful. It's good, but it's not so good that you want to see it in your hand. You want to search this card with your Nightmare Pain or Spirit of Yubel later on, but Mature Chronicle is great as it will allow you to special summon Yubel from your graveyard, which is fantastic. We don't really use the banishing effect. You could add banished cards to your hand if something happens to get banished. Of course, its fourth effect destroys one card on the field, which is great for getting rid of back row and great for just clearing any monsters that could be problematic or that you can't get over. And of course, its final effect, by removing 5 counters, you can add Super Polymerization from your deck to your hand, which again is the main point of the Yubel engine, to just fuse their opponent's entire field. Next up, we have 3 copies of Nightmare Pain. Nightmare Pain is one of the best cards in the Yubel engine. It's one of our starters. If you have this card, you can destroy a dark monster in your hand. If you have this card, you can destroy 1 dark monster on your field or in your hand to add 1 Yubel or 1 card that mentions it, except Nightmare Pain, from your deck to your hand. So this card will enable us to go into any of our Yubel cards, and of course, if we destroy Yubel monsters themselves, they then go into the next form of Yubel. Another thing that this card can be used for is to destroy the original Yubel or Spirit of Yubel in our hand, and they can then still evolve from that, which is fantastic, and that just gets us another Yubel on our field, as well as an extra Yubel card to go into. Next, we have 2 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gates. Opening of the Spirit Gates is fantastic. For one thing, it thins out our deck, which is always good, allowing us to grab our Dark Beckoning Beast, but also it gets another card in our hand for discard fodder for its own effect and for Super Polymerization. And then finally, this card can be used to special summon Yubel or Spirit of Yubel, or even Samsara Regenerating from our graveyard, which is really useful. That actually came up quite a bit when I was testing with this deck. It definitely needed the Opening of the Spirit Gates. There were actually moments when I was playing and I was like, I could really use Opening of the Spirit Gates right now. This would really help me, and so I added it back, and it was very handy. Every time I get this card, it's great. It also works well with the Despia engine because, you know, the problem with running 2 engines with Yubel is that obviously you can only do 1 at a time because each of them uses up your normal summon. You either go into Albur or you go into your Samsara Regenerating. The good thing about Opening of the Spirit Gates is that you can normal summon your Albur Jester of Despia. My hair is not behaving. There. Is that you can normal summon your Albur, Jester of Despia, grab your Brand Infusion, go full combo off of that, and then you can use Opening of the Spirit Gates to special summon your Samsara Regenerating Lotus, and then fully combo with the Yubel strategy. So having Opening of the Spirit Gates just to enable both plays at the same time in one turn is definitely really useful and is really what holds this deck together and helps it to go off. It's not 100% needed. Of course, we have 1-for-1 as well, and you know, you just don't need to go into both of them at the same time, but it is definitely a lot better if you do. Next up, we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, gotta negate those card effects, and finally 2 copies of Eternal Favorite. Eternal Favorite is basically our 4th and 5th Super Polymerization, and it can be searched, so we definitely need this card in our deck. And if you have no way to, like if you don't have the original Yubel on the field to fuse, or your opponent just doesn't have any good monsters to fuse with, then this card can be used to special summon Yubels that are banished or in your graveyard, which also gives it synergy with Mature Chronicle. So Eternal Favorite, obviously, definitely needed at least 2 to get that. If you want to see this card in your hand, but you mainly want to see Super Poly in your hand, and of course, Eternal Favorite can be searched, so we don't need it as much as Super Poly. Finally, for our extra deck, we run 3 copies of Yubel Dusk Ewig Liebe Watcher. Another option you could use instead of one of these is actually Guardian Chimera. Is not a bad option. The reason I don't really like it is because there must be someone using materials from your hand and field, which just doesn't... Like, when you use Super Polymerization with Yubel, you kind of want to eat all of your opponent's monsters, and you can't do that with Guardian Chimera, so personally, I would rather just have 3 of the Yubel fusion, but if you find yourself never going into 3 of them, then Guardian Chimera is definitely another fantastic option for this deck. Next up, we have 1 copy of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon. This is the final form for our branded fusion spells. We have 1 copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, another good Super Poly target. 1 copy of Predaplant Draco Stapelia, again, Super Fusion, great target, can also be summoned with your branded cards. We have 1 copy of Albion, the Branded Dragon, 1 copy of Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, 1 copy of Titanclad, the Ash Dragon. So that's all for our main branded fusion monsters. So the If you don't know, the engine with Branded is obviously to go into Albert and grab your Branded Fusion, or just have Branded Fusion in the hand, then use your Branded Fusion to fuse your Fawn of Albaz with basically any monster in our deck, any dark monster anyway, and you can then go into your Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, and with his effect, if this card is fusion summoned, you can discard one card, fusion summon one level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling fusion materials into your deck from your monsters on your field, graveyard, and or face-up banished cards. So you then use your Lubellion to immediately go into your Mirror Jade, but he can also be used to go into basically any other fusion. But if you're going first, Mirror Jade is generally the one that you want to go for, using your Albaz in the graveyard and Lubellion on the field. You do have other options that we can go into depending on the situation. Titanclad is always a great monster to finish off your opponent for the OTK. Albion is another option that you could go into straight off the bat by fusing light monsters. But we don't really have any light monsters in our deck, so maybe not with that then. I think I took out my light monsters. Originally there was an Effect Veiler in here, and now I remember why I had Effect Veiler in the first place. Okay, so definitely need that Effect Veiler just to go give us another option with Albion. If you want that option, maybe you want to swap it out for something else, but I'm going to swap in Infinite Impermanence for one copy of Effect Veiler just to enable us to go into Albion as well as Lubellion, but I've never really needed to go into it, so it doesn't matter too much. Finally, for our fusions, we have one copy of Garura, Wings of Resonant Life. This card, again, is a great Super Poly target and will allow us to draw one card if it's sent to the graveyard, which is always good, and one copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp. Again, great Super Poly target, enables protection, it's a good card overall. Next for our Xyz monsters, we have one copy of Divine Arsenal, aka Zeus Sky Thunder, because Zeus is great. We have one copy of Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Juggernaut, Liebe, because again, OTK, this is an OTK card if you can get 2 Yubels on the field, which is very, very easy. And finally, one Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Gustav Max. He can enable a finishing move, 2,000 points. It means you only need 2 Yubels on the field, to, plus your Geist Grinder Golem, deals 6,000 damage, and then go into Rail Cannon for the final 2,000, or you can simply use it to go into your Juggernaut Liebe. And finally, for our Link monsters, we have one copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Again, you might want to take out an Effect Veiler and swap out your Albion for maybe a Nightmare Unicorn would be another good choice for this deck. There's options for this deck. It doesn't matter too much. I just want to stress that enough. Like, it doesn't matter too much. Don't get confused. If you want to go into Albion instead, then go for that. I think this build works better with 3 impermanents. Or just 2 is fine as well if you want to have it at 40 cards, because honestly that looks a hell of a lot nicer, let's be real. But I ran it free because it's just a really good card to have in your hand. But yeah, there's a lot of options that you can do for this deck, especially with the extra deck, so take your own creativity, take how you feel and what you think is best for you and for what you're going up against. But this is the basics. This is my branded Yubel deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and comment down below. Check out the unique Yubel merch on the shop, including new Christmas Yubel merch on sinkara.myspreadshop.com. The new Christmas Yubel art is available on all products, including new Christmas products such as Santa hat, Christmas ornaments, etc. We've got all sorts of stuff, Christmas stockings too. So be sure to check that out, sinkara.myspreadshop.com. Thank you very much. Leave a comment if you enjoyed. Let me know what you would do. Let me know what changes you make to your deck when you make this for yourself, and let me know how it goes for you. But otherwise, thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. My name is Sinkara, and until next time, see ya.